Today I will talk you through my game versus the German Grandmaster Rasmus Svane. The game was played in the Schach Bundesliga as part of the match Aachener SV versus Hamburger SK in the 4th round, and we lost the match without any chance. This was actually my second game against Rasmus Svane, and in the first one he was still a very young kid. As I explained in my preview video on Pearls and Princes, Rasmus was part of the group of princes, German chess talents, along with Dennis Wagner, Matthias Blöbaum, and Alexander Donchenko. Now all of these princes have become very strong chess players with ratings between 2550 and 2650. And enough said, let's see how I played against one of these grown-up princes. My opponent started the game with the move e4, to which I replied with e5. Actually, I was a bit surprised that he played e4 because he's mainly a d4, c4, knight f3 type of player, and I was much more prepared for that. But given that he played e4, I thought, okay, he's probably going to go after my secret weapon, the Philidor. And I really wanted to avoid having a theory duel with one of these young guns who are probably much more into the theory than I am these days. So instead, I chose to play some quiet line of the Petrov, which I prepared for a previous game versus Abasov. So I still had this preparation in there, and I decided to give it a go. He took on e5 and played knight f3, and after knight takes e4, I went knight takes e4, and he played knight to c3. Take on c3, and yeah, so here this was featured in a couple of Carlsen and Caruana games, and Caruana played for some plan with bishop e7, knight d7, and castles, knight f6. I instead went for another line with bishop e7, and after bishop e3, I played knight c6. This is still relatively standard, but after queen d2, I now decided to go for bishop f5. And bishop f5 is not played very often. Usually, you either delay putting the bishop on f5, or you go bishop e6 if you do it this early. But the move bishop d5 was featured in a couple of games by Chinese players, and I thought, since they are stronger than me, copying them might not be such a bad idea. Plus, it's a move which is not very common, and I think it also caught my opponent a little bit off guard, in the sense that he started thinking already right now. And yeah, as I said, it's really a move which is not played very often. My opponent went for castles, and yeah, now I played queen d7. This was still my preparation against Abasov. And here he now thought for some minutes before playing the move bishop to e2. I think the main reason for playing bishop e2 is that he really wanted to avoid going to a more theoretical battle, because probably he felt that I'm ready for that, because I played previous moves quite quickly, and it was clear that he was not booked up in that line. So another line that might come to mind in this position would be to go for a pin with bishop to b5. But I think here black has also not really any major problems, because you could play a6, and let's say after takes, knight d4, queen d7, maybe bishop knight takes f5, queen takes f5, and the position should be around equal. So yeah, instead could also go knight d4, which also leads to some interesting play. Instead, he went for the slightly offbeat move bishop e2. Well, bishop e2, what is the advantage of that move? Well, the only advantage that I see a little bit is that it's better against a potential kingside castles of black. So if black castles kingside later on, maybe even here, it's definitely a valid option, but I have to be a little bit careful not to run into some attack here with, let's say, knight d4, and then followed by later g4. I think objectively this might still be fine for black, but I didn't really want to go for this position with opposite castles. So instead, the other logical move that comes to mind here probably is to play castles queenside. However, this does not really work out very well. The problem is that he can go knight d4. He now threatens to take on f5 to capture the pair of bishops, and he threatens to play bishop to b5. So these two threats combined don't make it very attractive for me to enter into this line, because if I just take the bishop, he can go queen takes d4, and now he has a double attack on g7 and on a7. If I go a6, I'm not even sure if he wants to take on g7, or if it's not even better to go queen a7 in this position. In any case, this is a pretty annoying position for me, and so I cannot really do that. So after bishop e2, I cannot go long castles. I could go short castles, but I didn't really want to. So instead I decided to play a6. a6 is another logical move, removing the threat of bishop b5 for the time being. And also the black's idea here is to go long castles at some point, and then the a7 pawn might not be hanging in some lines. So we will come back to this later. Yeah, here he started thinking for quite some time, and I think he realized that the most straightforward approaches with, for instance, knight to d4 don't really work out that well. Let's say after knight d4, he could go bishop d4 or queen d4. Let's say queen d4, but then I could just go bishop f6, let's say queen d2, and after castles, maybe bishop g5 is maybe not even the best idea, because this might run into queen a4, but let's say something like bishop d4, and the position should be around equal. Instead, he went for the move. So instead, after a6, he didn't go knight d4, but he went for the move king to b1. Yeah, king b1 is a useful waiting move, and it puts me into a little bit of a tricky spot, because I still cannot really castle. So if I now castle queenside, then he has this nice idea of playing knight d4, takes, bishop f6, and queen a7. And in this position, it's really annoying for me to have this intruder on a7, where, let's say, after queen to c6, he has a constant nuisance to have this queen on a7, and you never know at which point it's going to strike. Yeah? So one possibility here would be that he could go bishop f3, and maybe it's even immediately busted, but even if this is not the case, it's very unpleasant to have this queen on a7. So for that reason, I could not really play long castles and run into this knight d4, and therefore I decided that after king b1, I will play a really funny looking move, and I don't think many people would have played it, and I also don't think it's very good, which is the move rook to g8. Yeah, this is like a really weird move. The main idea of rook g8 is that I want to castle queenside. So let's say if he makes some waiting move like h3, I castle queenside, and now after knight d4 I can just take, and I can go c5, and now the position is round equal again. And if I manage to get castles queenside in without any problems, then black should be out of danger. So that's why I played this very funny looking move, rook to g8. And he now launched an immediate attack. And I have to say, I underestimated that. And even when I saw it on the board, I was not impressed, but it was actually much better than I thought. So he played the move knight to d4. Yeah, here I now have to take the knight. He plays queen takes d4. And now his idea is, of course, again, to prevent me from castling queenside, because then we would be back in some kind of position where the queen on a7 is really pretty annoying for me. So I could not allow that, and therefore I could not castle queenside at this point. However, I thought it's not really a big deal, because I can go bishop f6, activate my bishop, And now after queen b4, he's hitting my pawn on b7. Actually, I wasn't really expecting queen b4. I thought he was going to go queen d5, but yeah, he went queen b4 instead with a very interesting idea. And the idea is that after castle's queenside, he can go rook d5. Yeah, the main idea here is that I can't really go for some quiet waiting move. So let's say if I go c6, maybe you can pause the video and you can check what happens now, what could play now. Well, I think you could have found it, and the move is rook takes f5, queen takes f5, and the simple bishop to g4 wins a queen. So I can't play a waiting move here, and I have to remove my bishop from the f5 square such that it doesn't get captured. I played bishop to e6, and he played rook to a5. And even here I felt that I was not really afraid of this attack, let's put it this way. I felt that maybe he ran into the wrong direction, and he now will have this funny looking rook on a5, and once I manage to parry his threats, I should get a decent game. I played c5. This looks pretty logical. And yeah, here he made a major mistake, which was the move queen to a3. Instead, he should have gone queen to b6. After queen to b6, he's threatening to play rook takes a6, followed by bishop takes a6 and mate. And my idea during the game was that after queen b6, I actually have queen c7, but this does not work because of bishop takes c5. And then after d takes c, rook takes c5, black is busted. So queen b6 would have been much stronger, and actually with this move queen b6, this whole idea of rook d5, rook a5 would have made a lot of sense, and this would have been a very, very strong sequence of moves. So actually after queen b6, I would have been forced to go queen c6, when the idea is that bishop c5, queen takes g2 results in a complete mess. After queen c6, of course, white could also just take on c6 and go rook a6, and white would be a pawn up. So maybe this position is not directly won, but it's just a clear pawn up. Yeah, so in this position after c5, he had this good opportunity of playing queen b6 and making sense of all the previous moves that he made, but he failed to capitalize on it. Instead, as I said, he went for the much weaker move, queen to a3. Okay, he's always alluding to this option of playing bishop takes a6 or rook takes a6. And so I decided to remove my king and play king b8. I think here is one of the positions where I could have gone for queen c6, so either in this move or in the next. And after queen c6, it gets really complicated. I think here he cannot really take on c5 because I can take on g2 now. And if the rook runs, I can just take the bishop. So another option that you might have here is to take on, direct option is to take on a6. And I think I was a little bit afraid of this, but the computer is not impressed and just takes everything on g2. And my king looks, yeah, really to be endangered here, but the computer says that this is all fine and black can defend. So yeah, I failed to do that. So for instance, a line would be rook d1, bishop d5, and the bishop returns to b7, and black is kind of safe. So white can still try to continue, and yeah, but I think black should be able to defend against all of this. So after queen c6, probably white should play some more quiet move, but then it could very easily happen that these two pieces are in the end misplayed and black is better. So I think after queen c6, I would fancy my chances, in the sense that I would think I would like to play the position more with black than with white. So instead of playing queen c6, I played the move king to b8, which is still okay. But now after rook to d1, renewing the threat of bishop takes c5, yeah, I definitely now should have gone for queen to c6. I think in a previous move it was a little bit easier to go for this, because yeah, here this now seems to run into bishop takes a6 because I don't have queen takes g2 anymore. So, but this maneuver is not really all that dangerous according to the computer. It just very calmly defends with queen to b7. But I think here this is much harder to see it. So, for instance, one idea might be to parry queen a5, I guess with bishop takes c3, because now I cannot take back with a pawn because it's pinned, and after queen c3 I would have queen takes a6. So here to find queen c6 was a little bit more tricky. I think one move earlier it was definitely feasible to play queen c6. So I'm a little bit disappointed that I didn't see this on both occasions and now just play a much weaker move, which is queen to c7. So instead of getting a very complicated position and probably even a promising position for me, I now got an endgame, which is slightly worse after the forced sequence bishop to f4, threatening rook takes c5. So for instance, if I go g5, you could just go rook takes c5. And I cannot really take back because in the end, the pawn stays pinned. So let's say after queen c5, just queen takes c5. And if you run, then you could go back with bishop g3, but I think it's even feasible to just directly go for even more material, like rook c8, and queen d6, winning the game for white. So I cannot afford to play a move like g5 in this position, which then basically forces me to go bishop to e5. He swapped the bishops, and he went for the move queen takes c5. Yeah, and in this position, white is a pawn up, but the pawn that he's up is this strange double pawn here, so I was not really that worried about the endgame. Moreover, this rook on a5 still seems to be quite a bit misplaced. So here I now had the next option to get, now still a worse position, but a playable position at least, with a sequence of moves starting with rook takes d1, bishop d1, rook d8, and after king c1, now for instance I could go bishop d5. And it's not so clear how much better white really is in this position. Yeah, so yes, you have this 4 versus 2 here, but this is also 4 versus 3 on the other wing, which is farther away from the king, and therefore better for black. Plus, my coordination is much better here, so I think I would have kind of decent drawing chances in this position. And I initially wanted to go for this until I suddenly thought I have something which is more clever. And of course, this was not the case. Yeah? So I wasted the rest of my time for the next move, and I played a bad move. In a blitz game, I would have definitely gone for rook d1 and rook d8, but I spoiled it here. So I played queen takes c5, which is a mistake, and f6. Okay, I was counting on him playing king c1 as he did, and my idea was to go rook d1, and now actually now still the game would be okay if I didn't go for the stupid plan that I went for, but at some point it would return with rook d8, and I think I'm worse, but maybe the position is still holdable, or at least it's close whether it's holdable or not holdable. Instead, I went for a plan which just doesn't work, which is the move g5. Yeah, so maybe you can pause the video for a moment and you can see whether you find the sequence of moves which gives white very good winning chances. Yeah, I hope you found it. Unluckily, my opponent in the game also found it, and the key move here is h3. The idea is that black is threatening g4. So let's say white goes, tries to improve his rook somehow. Then I would go g4. And later on, rook g6, rook h6. And then I get a lot of counterplay against these weak pawns here. And I think black will be doing fine. So instead, after g5, it's advisable to go h3. I saw this when I decided to take on c5, but I thought I can go g4. White cannot really go h4, because after h4 I can go g3, and either he takes, bishop f3, bishop h3, and yeah, some position like bishop b7, let's say king b7, gh, rook h3 is yeah, maybe even better for black. So I was not really worried about this. And after g3, if he goes f3, I have bishop to h3. So I was also not worried about this. But the problem is after g4 that he can exchange on g4 and now play the very strong move g3. Yeah, so I hope you have found it when you last paused the video that this is the sequence. And g3 is really the key move in combination with the next one. So if he were to take on g4, I still could go rook g4 and play h5 and h4 next move. And so let's say rook d5, h4, takes. And this position, yeah, is still slightly better for white, but I think it's quite easily tenable for black. So I don't think I'm in major risk of losing here. Instead, after bishop g4, he played the move g3. And yeah, so now you will see the problem. So I went for it now, what I had started to play h5 with the idea to take on d1 and go rook g4 and h4. But now he has the very strong move rook to c4. And yeah, I was very upset at this point that I misplayed the game so badly in the last 10 moves. And I was really unhappy with my quality of play. Because now I managed to give this rook, which was really out of game on a5 and c5, I now managed that this rook is one of the strongest pieces on the board. Because on the one hand, it's cutting my king. And on the other hand, it's putting pressure on my bishop on g4. So I really felt like I completely misplayed the position. And yeah, if I try to implement my old plan with rook g4, then this fails, as this pawn endgame should be losing. For instance, I could go king e2 followed by f3, and I think this pawn endgame should be losing. Let's say takes, king e4, and g4, and I think this pawn endgame should be losing. So instead, in this position, I went for the move f5, and he replied with the logical move rook to c5, putting even more pressure on my pawns on the 5th rank. So I had to defend here, because I think that the endgame after f4 is probably hopeless. So after f4 he can go takes, and I think that this endgame should be fairly easily winning for white, even though white has to be a little bit careful, because if you end up with a and c pawn and rook against just a rook, it's a draw. It's a theoretical draw. So maybe I should have still gone for that, but I think it should be losing. So after rook c5, instead I went for rook to e8, protecting the pawn. But here he now just took on g4. Again, if I take with the h pawn, he will run with his king to e3. So I thought I could be clever by taking with the f pawn to potentially create an outpost for my rook on f3. But yeah, in any case, the ending is lost now. So king d2, rook f8, king e2, rook f5, and he played a4 to fix my pawns on the queen side. b6 to at least liberate my king. Rook c6 and rook d6. Yeah, he's walking around a little bit. This was time trouble, so but none of these moves is really creating any major issues for him because I don't have any active counterplay here. That's the main issue. Okay, I went with a5 because if I go king c6 here, you can also just cement the rook by playing c4. So at a5, c4, and now he's going to go c3 and b4 and open up my queen side. c3. I at least wanted to have the king on the perfect square for that purpose. King c6, b4, and rook to f3. There are definitely several options here which win for white, and he went for rook e3, followed by takes and rook d5 back. And now after rook f3, he took on a5. And yeah, I played e4. So my main idea that I still had is to get a position in which he remains with a and c pawn. And I'm able to exchange all the pawns on the king side. But this is not very easy to reach, and the way in which he played, I think it's not reachable at all. So he played rook to e5, takes, rook takes, rook a3, and now he just played c5 because he doesn't want to allow me to capture this one. Instead, he plays c5, and he will capture the h5 pawn later on. So here the very last idea that I saw was to go h4, forcing him to take, because now at least if I manage to exchange the g4 and c5 pawn and I manage to get my king over, then the game would be drawn. But yeah, of course, this is just daydreaming, and I didn't manage to get any of that. So after king c6, 1, he just calmly brings his king over, and he now played a very strong move, namely rook to h5. I mean, h5 looked more logical, it's probably also winning, but this is a very strong idea. And after the move king b5, it's again up to you to find the final touch. Okay, I hope you found it after pausing the video, and now I'm going to show you what Rasmus did. So he played rook h8, very strong, with just the idea of running with a pawn. It's a classical motive, h5. If I run back to, let's say, b7, then he can go, I think he can even go h7 here, or he can go f4, which is also winning, because now I cannot really stop both pawns at the same time. So if I go rook f3, then this should be winning. Also h7 should be winning. I think this is maybe even makes the point even clearer. So h7, and after rook h3, I now run with the f pawn as well. And black can never really leave b7, because once he goes to the 6th rank, he gets a check and I get a new queen. And once he tries to approach me via the 7th rank, I always have this very standard idea to capture the rook in this way. So after h5, the game is over. I can just run back, h6, h7, and yeah, the same idea that we saw beforehand. Rook a8. At least now my king is close enough to the pawn such that I can take. But unfortunately, this pawn ending is just completely lost, and thus I resigned. So maybe for those of you who don't play that often, why is this endgame lost? So after king g6, white goes king g4. and the problem is that white will always get the opposition. And for instance, like this, and if you go king f7, king f5, king g7, king e6, king g6, now just f4, king g7, f5, again threatening king e7 and promotion, so only moves king f8, king f6, king e8, king g7, and pawn runs. And white is about to get a new queen. Okay, so I lost the game. I'm gonna be honest in the sense that this game annoyed me quite a bit more than the first 3 games in the league. And the main reason for that is that I feel that I didn't really play at my full strength, particularly after queen a3. I had the option to go queen c6 with a very complicated position. After rook d1, I again had the option to go queen c6, and in both cases, the game would have become very unclear, and maybe even easier to play for me, because white really has to do something concrete due to this rook and queen, which could potentially become very misplaced. This, I think, can happen, but I'm even more annoyed that I lost this position without giving him any real fight. I think the line that I just showed you takes rook d8, bishop d5, and I mean, maybe I lose the game in the end, or maybe it's a draw. But in any case, there would be a lot of fight left, and I have the feeling that I made it just way too easy for him to win this game. So in that sense, I'm a little bit disappointed, or at least I was a little bit disappointed about the game. But now, of course, the Christmas break was there, and now I'm really looking forward to playing the last 11 games of this season. So thanks a lot to everyone for watching. If you like the channel, please click on like and subscribe, or whatever you want. And see you next time. Bye-bye.